Hello everyone and welcome. My name is James Harding. I'm the editor of Tortoise. We held actually a series of think-ins, so we held one specifically on the Tavistock, well over a year ago now. And from it we heard a number of different stories, but we left thinking, hang on, we still don't really understand how this place works.
What we thought was most important at the beginning was that when I went and read every report that had been done and all the paperwork that's out there and all the reporting that was out there, I felt I don't know the Tavistock story. What you learn through the series is that a lot of the reporting, a lot of the stories that have been told about the Tavistock, that there was like a fast track into puberty blockers and all of those stories that they weren't true. That's not the story I heard. I heard a story about a clinic that was incredibly thoughtful, incredibly exploratory, very different approaches. I think lots of different people had different experiences within the Tavistock, and I think that was disrupted by shortages and then very long waiting lists and lots of different experiences. But I felt like we got to a better version of the truth, which is not kind of an ideologically riven organisation, but an organisation trying to keep its head in amongst a culture war that was just getting louder and louder and louder.
As I made clear in the podcast, I really wish I had got blockers earlier. And I was at the Tavistock for 3.5, nearly 4 years, and I had no medical intervention. I had purely therapeutic and investigative kind of consultations and appointments to really get to the root of it and understand, is this right for me and is this the right route? And I maintained it was.
One of the difficult issues in choosing this subject was, how do you give voice to people who are skeptical of the whole question of medical treatment? Our choice journalistically was that if you entered into that debate, you would not really get to the questions that were being chosen by the Tavistock.
There wasn't enough tracking of individuals who had been given puberty blockers or not, as to what happened to them.
Because there was concern about safety of people in the system, not because of the treatment that GIDS was giving, but because of the absence of management of people who are on the waiting list, which is a wider, and I think this goes to our academic friends' point around the wider responsibility. It's not just a story of underfunding, but I do think that NHS England is ultimately responsible for setting a specification, commissioning a service, anticipating demand, and I think it was an important question to put to NHS England.
Yeah, there's been about 20,000 referrals since about 2008, something like that, to the service. There's obviously a big waiting list, so not that many people have been seen. There was a recent paper with discharge outcomes, which has been published, which showed that between 2008 and about 2021, I think it was, something like fewer than 250 young people went forward who were under 16 to access puberty blockers. And this is the only NHS service for every young person in England and Wales.
The question of following people through over the long haul. At the moment, the CAS review has recommended that all young people who want to access puberty blockers need to be enrolled in a treatment trial. They actually have to go to court to have a change in the law to make that possible, because you cannot offer people with a coercive contract that they must be enrolled in a treatment trial. So there are huge ethical issues in the follow-up, because if people as adults have a gender recognition certificate, they are living in that role legally now, and it is illegal to follow them up.
But that point about private medicine, that particularly while the NHS tries to work out what it's going to offer, there is a danger that private medicine moves into that space, and that's completely unregulated. And I think there's a story there that there's more to be done on.
I come away thinking about what do you do when you don't have either the evidence or a clear political or scientific basis on which to act, but you nonetheless have someone in front of you and you have to make a choice. And I do think there's a question in my mind which is about what's the institutional way in which ethical decisions, health decisions are communicated to the public. Because the thing I come away from this most of all, if I was kind of to mark our own homework in terms of our own podcast, is there is still a massive debate here fundamentally around this generational divide, Tom, this point that, Keith, you made and you made around, okay, can you explain the ethics of this decision, right? And I do think that, your point, Polly, is right, is that the risk is that without some kind of settled understanding, public understanding, is that you get something that is either, that's just contested in every way. I'm really struck by the fact that there are two totally different pools, even in discussing this story. One is about the experience of those people who received care, and the other is about the principle of care and the public interest of care. And I do think that there's an issue about how we in the media discuss health, because it feels like it's hard to get groups of people together where these things are quite so contested and discuss them. On that note, big thank you to Katie and Polly, who've helped us understand this in all their work over the last few months. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for watching that clip. If you'd like to see the full interview, just click here. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you'd like to join us live in the newsroom, head to tortoisemedia.com/book.